Hi everyone, Professor Philip Travis here, Eastern Oregon University. I want to take a second, make a video for you, and talk a little bit about papers, history papers, and doing research in our library to write these papers. And I'm making this video for students who are in my survey level courses, my 100 level courses, as well as my 300 and 400 level courses. So a couple of things to think and key rule of thumb here when writing papers, most significantly I think, is make sure you focus your paper. You want your paper to be specific. You want it to focus in on a very precise point that will then be defended by evidence throughout the paper. You don't want papers that read like general summaries of subject areas. Instead, you want to look at an element of history and you want to delve into that specific element and ask yourself, what does this mean? Why is this important? Why should readers want to read this? Why does this matter in shaping change over time and the present? So focus in, be specific. If you're writing a paper, for example, about modern Russia, you don't want to write a paper that generally summarizes, say, every member of the Politburo during the age of Stalin. Instead, you want to look at something specific. Maybe look at the gulags and consider the role that the gulags played in the exercise of power in the Stalinist state. You might look at the Cuban Missile Crisis and consider specifically what the thinking of Nikita Khrushchev was in the Cuban Missile Crisis and what motivated that thinking. If you were in an upper division American history course, maybe you write a paper about the role of race and gender in motivating foreign policy in wars like the Spanish-American War. Or maybe you examine the internment of German nationals during World War I and consider what this means about American civil liberties during a time of war. So consider specific topics. Focus in. If you're in one of my world history courses, you're writing about ancient Athens, you don't want to write a paper that is sort of like talking about philosophy, comedy, tragedy, architecture and building, and democracy. You don't want to do all of those. Instead, you want to choose one specific item. For example, if you're looking at the Athenians, you might research Athenian democracy, and maybe you make a specific point about the importance of critically minded and educated citizenry, because the Athenian democracy had to constantly be vigilant against tyrants, and this required the citizenry to be engaged and prepared to check individuals who wanted to seize control of its democracy. So make a specific argument. If you're in one of my modern Germany courses or my modern Russia course, or my U.S. history courses or my U.S. military history courses, all of this applies. Focus in and make a specific argument. Now, obviously, the requirements for writing a good paper in an upper division course versus lower division course are very different, but the rule is the same. Make sure you have a strong and focused thesis statement. Pose some questions or a question that you can answer in the introduction. Then in the introduction, provide a thesis that sort of answers that question, and then defend that thesis with evidence throughout the paper. If you're in one of my upper division courses, whether it's the history, U.S. history in the 20th century, or the history of modern Russia, or the history of modern Germany, or post-war Europe, or something like that, I want all of your research papers to begin with a narrative hook. So a paragraph that provides a sort of engaging, sort of first-hand account drawn from source documentation that then leads into the second paragraph, which is your argument paragraph, where then you posit that specific and precise thesis that you will then defend with evidence throughout the paper. So I want to see us doing some research from our library, as well as other areas with respect to digital archives on the web. I do not want in any paper in any class, I don't want .com sources. I want to see you doing research um, from legitimate historians and academic sites or primary source documents from legitimate archives. That's what I'm looking for when I kind of critique the documents used in your paper. So here we are, we're at our EOU library, and here, even if you can't physically be at the library, you will find that the EOU library has a lot of access to electronic materials. So I can go right in here from the home page. You log in, you go right here, and I can search for a number of different things. You can see here, you can search EOU, you can search Summit, which is from other libraries. You can look for articles only. You could go to databases, journals, but let's just search them all in this case. And in this case, it looks like the gulags came up for, if you were in modern Russia, the history of modern Russia, maybe you would be researching that topic. So let's search that. So you search the gulags and you'll find some things here. Immediately you have an ebook here, The Gulag After Stalin, Redefining Punishment in Khrushchev's Soviet Union. So that could be a very potentially valuable source in positing the de-Stalinization effort of Nikita Khrushchev. And this is from Cornell University Press, so you can be pretty certain that that's probably a pretty good source. And of course, it has online access, so that means it's an ebook, and you can look at this right there online. Let's see, any other ones here? Any articles? Here's another ebook. Let's see. Ebooks, got quite a few ebooks. It's a reference entry. So I'm sure if you continue to search that, you would find articles. Let's look for something else. How about the Cuban Missile Crisis? Let's see what we find here. We search the Cuban Missile Crisis, and this one, of course, could be something that could be relevant to a U.S. history class and looking at something like John F. Kennedy's administration, or in some cases also a modern Russia course, as of course that the other side was, of course, the Soviet Union under Khrushchev. And here you see immediately an ebook with online access, another ebook with online access. We have some videos, so you have to request those. Some of these need to be requested. Here's an e-video if you wanted to look at something like that. Here's another ebook, Letters, Khrushchev, Kennedy, Castro, and the Cuban Missile Crisis. So that certainly could be relevant as well. So my point is use the EOU library. There's numerous sources here for you to access, regardless of whether or not you're in an introductory level course or an upper division course, whether it's my military history course, my modern Russia course, my modern Germany, my modern U.S. 20th century course, which I usually offer in the spring semester or spring term, and of course my intro level courses, my world history courses, my U.S. history 200 level courses. All of these, you can find lots of relevant sources at our EOU library, and you just log in and you can search all of these. You can search the databases. You can see how many results you have. So if you look here, you can see just how many results there were for that search. So you would want to refine that. You can go up here to databases to refine. Maybe you want a specific journal article that you could refine, in looking for this. Now, let's search for one for somebody that might be in my world history survey course. Let's say, let's see if we can find something for the Gracchi brothers, the reformers of the Roman period of the Republic. Let's see here. Article, the antebellum American textbook authors populist history of Roman land reform and the Gracchi brothers. So here's a journal entry, peer-reviewed with online access about the Gracchi brothers. Let's see, here's a reference entry, print book, ebook. Here's an article, Machiavelli and the Gracchi, Prudence, Violence, and Redistribution. That's peer-reviewed also, and it has online access. So the redistributive agenda of the Gracchi brothers, Roman tribunes frequently blamed for causing the collapse of the Roman Republic. So that might be helpful as well. The Gracchi brothers were, of course, important reformers during the period after the Punic Wars in the history of Rome, who tried to reform the system. Both were ultimately murdered, giving rise to the first century period of almost continuous civil war in Rome that gives us rise ultimately to Julius Caesar. So another topic you might be searching. Maybe you want to search, if you're in my American history course, the Philippine-American War. Let's see what kind of online access we find here. Okay, Women's Anti-Imperialism, the White Man's Burden in the Philippine-American War. This is an article. It's peer-reviewed. You have online access. So that could be a really neat, if you were in my American history course, that could be a really neat article to use, and to use as potentially the basis for a neat paper. And if you click online access, you come down here. Let's see. Okay, we have full text available at Sage and JSTOR. So let's see here. And we should be able to get a PDF of this if it'll come up. Okay, so there you go, and you can download the PDF, and there you have it, and the whole article can be downloaded right there. And so use the EOU databases, use our library. It will only help you in writing, and you have related reading over here. You can see down here. It's only going to help you write a better paper. Yeah, so use the EOU library. I would recommend doing the main search unless you know exactly where you want to look. If you wanted, again, to do, a history of modern Russia type of topic, maybe you want to look for something on the Bolshevik Revolution. And let's see what we find here. So here you have a peer-reviewed open access article on the Bolshevik Revolution. Let's see, we have another article on the Bolshevik Revolution, University of Chicago Press, peer-reviewed, online access. So again, use the EOU library, log in, use the main search. If you have to, of course, there's many results here, so if you have to refine it, you just refine it. Remember to find a focused and specific topic that'll help you developing or pursuing your research and developing the paper, whether you're in an introductory level class or you're in an upper division class. And remember, one of the key things to history writing is actually doing the research. And that sounds really obvious, but the reality is that if you sit down and you do the research, you say, I want to research the Bolshevik Revolution, or I want to research, if you're in an American history course, I want to research the New Deal. Well, start out by doing some research, doing some reading, doing some background on it. And as you read and research the material, you will be able to get a better handle for how to focus in your topic. Let the documents speak to you as much as is possible, as opposed to making your hypothesis kind of fit with the documents, if that makes sense. Try to let the documents speak to what your argument should be. That's really the secret. Last thing I want to show you, there are also digital archives out there. Here, the Wilson Center, Woodrow Wilson Center, has a really good digital archive where you can access a pretty reasonable amount of primary sources, first-hand accounts from a myriad of things. So if you were in my post-war Europe class when I offered that, here's a good one on the uprisings of 1956. That's also relevant to a modern Russia course because, of course, those uprisings were related to the process of de-Stalinization, and there's 81 documents there. You have documents that relate to topics associated with my modern Germany course. Of course, you see here relating to the end or the unification of Eastern and Western Germany. There's 20 documents there. You have a number of different things. Here's 47 documents relating to the Berlin Wall. There's Cuban Missile Crisis documents here. And again, this is the Wilson Center, a digital archive. So this is a good archive, and there are other archives like this out there that have digitized documents that are good to be used. It's just, remember, be careful to vet what you're using for research. Start with the EOU library. Look for primary sources at places like the Wilson Center or other presidential libraries. Avoid .coms. Make sure that when you're looking at a secondary source, you vet who the author is. Is it a legitimate historian? Is it published by a legitimate academic publisher? Or is it a .com site where there might be some reasons to question the credibility of the source? So remember, focus, do some background research, focus, develop a precise thesis, pose it clearly in the introduction, defend it with academic evidence, and always cite your work. And I look forward to reading everyone's papers. I hope this is helpful and not too long.